Coffee Break German, Season 2, Episode 9. Hallo und herzlich willkommen zu Coffee Break German. Ich bin Marc.
Und ich bin Andrea.
Wie geht's dir, Andrea?
Mir geht's wunderbar. Und dir, Marc?
Mir geht's auch wunderbar.
Oh, warum geht es dir wunderbar?
Also, es geht mir wunderbar, denn ich bin sehr froh.
Super, das freut mich.
Und warum geht es dir wunderbar?
Mir geht es wunderbar, denn ich bin gesund.
Es geht dir wunderbar, denn du bist gesund?
Genau.
You're feeling wonderful because you're healthy?
Ja.
Okay, gesund, healthy. Very good. So we were looking at denn last time, a very useful word because it means that we can give reasons for things.
Yes, and we don't have to change our sentence structure.
That's the key thing about denn. However, I think the time has come to take this a little further, and we're going to use the other word this time for giving reasons which will involve a little bit of a change, yes?
Yes, it's a little bit more complicated, but nothing our listeners can't handle.
Okay, all of that coming up in this lesson of Coffee Break German, and also we'll be back with Julia for our cultural correspondence section. Los geht's! Okay, Andrea, can we just go through denn one more time?
Yes. Maybe with a little example?
Yes.
Ich trinke keinen Kaffee, denn ich gehe heute früh ins Bett.
Okay, so I think you're saying you are not drinking any coffee because you're going to bed early.
Ja, genau.
Let's hear it again.
Ich trinke keinen Kaffee, denn ich gehe heute früh ins Bett.
So that's that keinen or keine or kein. It's not any.
Genau.
Okay, it's a tricky concept that.
Yes.
Ich trinke keinen Kaffee.
It's also in the accusative.
Yeah, and so that will then agree in the same way as einen.
Genau.
Okay, that's handy that it works the same way as ein. So ich trinke keinen Kaffee. Then you said, denn ich gehe heute früh ins Bed because I'm going today early in bed.
Genau.
I'm going to bed early. Okay, so what's different about how we're going to do this today?
So we're going to use a different word. We're going to use weil.
Weil, so that's W-E-I-L.
Genau, and last time we talked about denn and the main clause, the Hauptsatz.
Yeah, I remember that.
Weil doesn't go with the main clause. It goes with what we call a subordinate clause, a Nebensatz.
Nebensatz, okay. So just thinking back to our main clause, what we said last time was that that's a sentence or a part of a sentence that can exist on its own.
Yes, a Hauptsatz, if you say it, ich gehe heute früh ins Bett, I go to bed early today, that means something.
Okay.
We don't need to add anything if we don't want to.
But with the subordinate clause, it has to connect with something else. Is that right?
Yes, the subordinate clause is meaningless without a main clause. So I'm going to make the same sentence, but I'm using weil.
Okay.
Ich trinke keinen Kaffee, weil ich heute früh ins Bett gehe.
Right. So let's just listen to the two sentences together to see the differences here. And if you're looking at the video version, you'll be able to see those two sentences and exactly how they are formed. So first of all, using denn.
Ich trinke keinen Kaffee, denn ich gehe heute früh ins Bett.
So, denn ich gehe heute früh ins Bett. And then with weil.
Ich trinke keinen Kaffee, weil ich heute früh ins Bett gehe.
Right. So with the weil, our verb gehe is going to the end.
Exactly.
And that's because, as you said, it's a subordinate clause.
Yes.
So coming back to this idea of existing on its own, the main clause, I am going to bed early today, exists on its own. But
Yes.
if we begin that main clause, if we begin that part of the sentence by saying, because I am going to bed, we need something else. We need there to be the result of because I am going to bed. And that's what makes it subordinate.
Yes. You see this in English. If I just said to you, because I'm going to bed, you would not know what I'm wanting to say.
Okay, so the because is what kind of makes other questions come up in our mind.
Yes.
Right. So the subordinate clause then is starting with weil, and as a result of starting with weil and being a subordinate clause, our verb is going to the end.
Exactly.
So, ich trinke keinen Kaffee, weil ich früh ins Bett gehe. We said heute as well there, yeah? So, weil ich heute früh ins Bett gehe.
Super.
Right. So, weil ich heute früh ins Bett gehe. The gehe is going right to the end. That seems to make sense so far. But I do have a question. You know me, and I like to know how things look when they're written down and so on. What about a comma? Do we need a comma this time?
Definitely. Okay. We have a main clause and a subordinate clause, and they're separated by a comma.
So, ich trinke keinen Kaffee, Komma, weil ich heute früh ins Bett gehe.
Genau, super.
Okay, could you give us another example sentence, please?
Klar. Patricia lernt Deutsch, weil ihr Freund Deutscher ist.
So there you're saying Patricia is learning German because her boyfriend or her friend?
We can assume here that it's her boyfriend.
Okay, because her boyfriend is German.
Genau.
So Patricia lernt Deutsch, weil ihr Freund Deutscher ist.
Yes, exactly.
If we were using denn there, would we say Patricia lernt Deutsch, denn ihr Freund ist Deutscher?
Super.
So Deutscher there is that nationality form. It's the noun.
It means a German
man in this case.
Yes.
Okay. Patricia lernt Deutsch, weil ihr Freund Deutscher ist. Right. It seems to make sense, but there are a couple of things that I'm wondering about, particularly with this subordinate clause and what happens there. The first question I have is about our lovely separable verbs. What happens there?
Yes, they are no longer separated in the subordinate clause. So
excellent.
That makes it much easier.
Can you give us an example?
Of course. Beatrice bekommt viel für ihr Geld, weil sie beim Discounter einkauft.
Okay, we're back to that discounter shop, the discount superstore.
It's very important for the Germans.
Okay. Beatrice bekommt viel für ihr Geld, you said. So Beatrice gets lots for her money.
Genau.
Bekommt viel für ihr Geld, weil, can you repeat the second part?
Weil sie beim Discounter einkauft.
So because she, by the discount store, buys.
Genau.
Okay, beim Discounter. That's quite tricky. Bei dem Discounter?
Genau, beim.
Okay, so that's a dative, isn't it?
Yes.
Right. Again, we're not going too far into the dative, but weil sie beim Discounter einkauft.
Yes, exactly. So you see the verb is not separated, but still conjugated.
So let's think about this with denn. Could we say Beatrice bekommt viel für ihr Geld, denn sie kauft beim Discounter ein?
Sehr gut.
Okay, I always want to put the wrong bit of the separable verb first. But
yes, the conjugated bit always comes first.
Okay, so weil sie kauft beim not weil, denn in that case. So Beatrice bekommt viel für ihr Geld, denn sie kauft beim Discounter ein.
Genau.
Or Beatrice bekommt viel für ihr Geld, weil sie beim Discounter einkauft.
Super, sehr, sehr gut.
That makes sense. Now, I said I had another question, and it's a similar question in a sense, because we've had some other verbs, I'm thinking like Klavier spielen, which are similar to the separable verbs, but not quite. What happens with them?
So, I could make an example.
Okay.
Mark hat keine Zeit, weil Klavier spielt.
Okay, so they work just like the separable verbs.
Exactly.
So Mark has no time because he plays the piano.
Genau, super.
I wish it were like that. I've got no time to play the piano because, let's see if I can say that. Ich spiele nie Klavier, weil ich keine Zeit habe.
Genau, sehr gut.
Okay, right. I think we're going to pause there. We're going to take a little break. Afterwards, we of course have Julia with our cultural correspondence section, and then we'll do a little more practice of Weil. Okay?
Genau, super.
Here at Coffee Break German, we want to help you turn your downtime into do time. Brauchst du mehr Übung? Join us on Facebook 3 times a week and put your German to work with our language challenges and cultural insights. As they say, practice makes perfect. Oder auf Deutsch, Übung macht den Meister. Head over to facebook.com/coffeebreakgerman. Wir sehen uns hoffentlich bald.
Okay, welcome back. Now, when we're learning a language, it's also very important that we look at the culture of the countries where the language is spoken, because culture is so important to learning. Wouldn't you agree, Andrea?
Yes, and I can even say this in German with a little Weil sentence.
Excellent. Let's hear it.
Wenn wir eine Sprache lernen, sollten wir auch über die Kultur des Landes etwas lernen,
Ja.
weil Kultur sehr wichtig ist.
With our ist coming at the end. Excellent.
Genau.
I like it. And of course, for our cultural correspondence section, it's time to turn to Julia. Hallo, Julia.
Hallöchen, Marc und Andrea und guten Tag an alle unsere Coffee Break German Zuhörer. Ich bin's wieder, Julia, eure Kulturreporterin. Letztes Wochenende bin ich nach Leipzig gefahren. I've just come back from a trip to the beautiful city of Leipzig, situated about 2 hours south of Berlin. And I thought you'd like to get to know yet another town to visit on your trip to Germany. Leipzig has about 500,000 inhabitants, which makes it the largest city in the federal state, or Bundesland, Saxony, which in German is Sachsen. A great way to start your journey is to go up the huge city tower in the center of Leipzig. The visitors platform on the 34th floor offers an amazing view over the city and the many monuments and lakes nearby. Once you're on the ground again, take a walk through the many historical streets in the center of the city and maybe go on a little shopping trip. Don't worry in case it's raining, because many shops are situated in the famous Passagen. These are historical shopping arcades which have beautiful walls and ceilings, which actually have to be seen to be believed. If you're interested in history, you should definitely come to Leipzig. The city in former Eastern Germany played a very important role in instigating the fall of communism in Eastern Europe with the revolutions of 1989. During the so-called Monday demonstrations, thousands of Leipzig citizens took to the streets and protested against the oppressive regime, culminating in the biggest peaceful demonstration on the 9th of October 1989, when 70,000 citizens demonstrated in Leipzig. You can find out more about this important time in German history in an impressive museum that actually used to be a Stasi prison. Leipzig is especially beautiful in summer, where you can enjoy the many parks or sit at the banks of the river Weiße Elster. One of my favorite ways to enjoy the city in summer is by boat. You can rent canoes or rowing boats and enjoy a very different look at the city. Talking about water and recreation, for many years several old open-cast mines south of Leipzig have been flooded in order to convert this area into a huge lake district. While some of the lakes have already existed for many years, others are still in progress, and the whole project is planned to be finished in 2060. So just a 25-minute bike ride away from the center, you can sit at the beach and relax. So let's sum up why visiting Leipzig is definitely worth it. Auf Deutsch. Leipzig ist sehr interessant, weil es eine spannende Geschichte hat. Du musst nach Leipzig fahren, denn es ist wirklich schön. Ich fahre gern nach Leipzig, weil ich die vielen Parks und die Seen liebe. Und jetzt zurück ins Studio, weil ich ganz müde bin. Bis bald!
Vielen Dank, Julia, also for the great examples with weil and then. They were fantastic.
Absolutely. Okay, Andrea, what are we going to look at now? Because we've been looking at weil and the way in which that's used with our subordinate clauses. Can you give us some more information about this?
Yes. So weil has one very big advantage to then, and we can start a sentence with it when we answer a question.
Okay.
So, for example, if I ask you, warum ist Karl müde? With then you would have had to say, Karl ist müde, denn arbeitet oft lange.
So Karl is tired because he often works long hours.
And with weil, we don't need to do this. So I can ask, warum ist Karl müde?
And I could just answer, weil oft lange arbeitet.
Yes. And that is a perfect answer.
So it's okay to start the sentence with the equivalent of because, yeah?
Yes.
Because in English, we're not really supposed to do that.
Well, but in German, if you write up an essay, you're not meant to do this either. But in a conversation, that's what we do. We don't always repeat the question.
Okay, so in that case, we have to use weil, though.
Yes.
And therefore, we have to think about where that verb goes in the subordinate clause.
Exactly.
So would I be right in thinking then that subordinate clause with weil, it can almost exist on its own?
Yes, but only as an answer.
Because we already have the situation from the question.
Exactly. We know what we're given reason for.
That makes sense. Okay, I think it's time to put the weil into practice. How would we best do that?
Well, I'm going to ask you a few questions.
Okay.
In German. Yes, are you ready?
Bitte schön, ja.
Bist du bereit?
Ich bin bereit.
Super. Also, Marc, warum lernst du Deutsch?
And I can just start with weil.
Ja.
Weil ich Deutsch eine schöne Sprache finde.
Genau, super.
Okay, so
that makes perfect sense because we've both heard the question.
yes.
You don't have to repeat the content of the question.
I could say, ich lerne Deutsch, weil ich Deutsch eine schöne Sprache finde.
That would be excellent, but really not necessary, and it's not how people speak.
Okay.
We're a little bit lazy too.
That's fair enough, yeah, okay.
So, are you ready for the second question?
Yep.
Weshalb frühstückst du oft früh?
I have never heard the word that you started that sentence with.
Aha, it's another question word that means why.
And what was it?
Weshalb.
Weshalb. Is there a word deshalb?
Yes,
Okay, what does deshalb mean?
that's why.
All right. So, okay, but I couldn't answer weshalb with deshalb.
No, because weil is because.
Yeah.
And deshalb is that's why.
Right, okay. So the question was,
Weshalb frühstückst du oft früh?
why do you often breakfast early? Why
Yes.
do you often have breakfast early? Okay. Weil ich stehe jeden Tag früh auf. No, because I need to put my verb to the end and it's a separable, but it doesn't separate this time. Is that correct?
Genau.
Okay. So, weil ich jeden Tag früh aufstehe.
Sehr gut, super.
Okay. Weil ich jeden Tag früh aufstehe because I get up early every day and that's why I have breakfast early. Okay.
Super. So, third question. Wieso ist es in Schottland oft kalt?
Wieso? I'm
It's
guessing
another way of saying why.
You've got many ways of saying
I know.
why. Okay, so wieso ist es in Schottland oft kalt? That's what you said?
Mhm.
Okay. Weil Schottland im Nord von Europa ist?
Im Norden.
Im Norden, okay. Weil Schottland im Norden von Europa ist.
Sehr gut, super.
Could I say, weil Schottland im Nordeuropa ist? Is there a way of...
In Nordeuropa. We don't use the dative.
Okay, in Nordeuropa. Nordeuropa ist,
Genau.
weil Schottland in Nordeuropa ist.
Genau, super.
But if it's in the north of Europe, im Norden von Europa.
Genau. Oder man könnte auch sagen in Nordwesteuropa.
In Nordwesteuropa. That's maybe a little easier because it splits up the sounds.
Genau. Oder weil Schottland im Nordwesten von Europa ist.
Okay, that's getting tricky. Weil Schottland im Nordwesten von Europa ist. Okay.
Genau, super. So, ready for the last sentence, for the last question?
Ja.
Warum sprichst du Italienisch?
Eine gute Frage. Also ich spreche Italienisch, weil ich mit Francesca Italienisch lerne.
Sehr gut.
Oder vielleicht weil meine Oma Italienerin war.
Oh, fantastisch, ja.
And I'm using war there.
Genau, weil meine Oma Italienerin war.
Weil meine Oma Italienerin war.
Genau, super.
Because my grandmother was Italian. And of course, the other reason is because I'm learning and teaching with Francesca on Coffee Break Italian. So if you fancy learning some Italian, you can, of course, head to coffeebreakitalian.com. But weil ich mit Francesca Italienisch lerne und weil meine Oma Italienerin war.
Sehr gut, super.
Oh, that's been quite tricky. But I hope that our listeners are getting the difference between weil and denn and working out the ways in which they can both be used to give reasons for various things.
Fantastic.
Okay, that is it for this episode of Coffee Break German. Of course, there is more for you at coffeebreakgermanplus.com, where you can access the bonus listening materials, which will give you further practice of weil with some translation sentences. There are, of course, the lesson notes, which go into great detail on what we've covered in today's lesson. And there is also the video version. So if you're a visual learner and like to see the words on the screen, then head to coffeebreakgermanplus.com and take our course in the Coffee Break Academy.
Yes, and now to our challenge for this week, which is great. We'd love to know why you're learning German. Warum lernst du Deutsch? You can answer this question starting with weil, and remember to think about your word order. Post your answer in a comment on the website or on our Facebook page. Just search for Coffee Break German on Facebook and you'll find us.
Indeed, and you can also search for Coffee Break German on Instagram and you'll find us there too, instagram.com/coffeebreakgerman, and we are at Learn German on Twitter. That is it for this episode. Das reicht für heute.
Ja, genau.
Weil wir sehr müde sind.
Ja, weil wir viel gearbeitet haben.
Ja, okay. Until the next time then, bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüss.
Bis bald.
You have been listening to a production of the Coffee Break Academy for the Radiolingua Network. Copyright 2017 Radiolingua Limited. Recording copyright 2017 Radiolingua Limited. All rights reserved.